Let's talk about texture 2.0. If you haven't seen our first texture video, Texture Jumps, you want to watch that now because that gives you some important context for what we are about to discuss. So we're talking about two tips for texturing in this video, and the first one is called 50% flats. But very important, flats are what we would call relative. Let's look at that now. So you'll notice here, first of all, this is our central block that we're looking at, the stripped log. So in this pattern right here, this concrete is clearly the flat. Well, this is kind of one of the higher textures, and it falls about the same here with the powder concrete. They're about the same level of texture. So we would say in this case, the stripped log is your high texture, your extreme texture, so to speak. But let's go up one. And if you'll notice here, once again, the same block, the stripped log, is actually our flat in this combination. So it is the flattest block that is on here. And then this is kind of what I would call a transition texture. And then this is your high texture, your extreme texture in this case. But then we have one more example. Once again, the same block. All right, so on this one, our flat is once again our concrete. And then here, our stripped log is our transition texture. Well, this is the high texture, not necessarily extreme, but a high texture. Now you'll notice something else here. So not only has our stripped log kind of changed how it's acting depending on the surrounding blocks, this is your flat, this is not your flat, this is almost a transition from your flat. But then also if we take a step back here, interestingly enough, this pattern right here, even though your copper is actually more of a defined texture because of these ridges than, for example, your concrete powder is, it almost looks more flat as a whole than this one does. So even though this is a texture block, it can actually break the 50% flat rule. Think of this like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. On the left side, you have something that's just a little bit too much on the texture wheel. By the way, all these details are exactly the same in each building. This one has too little texture on the texture wheel, and then this one is just about right. So here we're running into what I just talked about. The fact that these are your high textures on this building, but kind of from this distance, especially compared to the ones beside them, it almost looks like the entire thing is full of flats, which makes it break your 50% flat rule. In fact, I would say the way to fix this building is actually to add more details, which will give more texture to it. On the other hand, over here, this wall right here is like 10% flat and is right here down the middle, maybe 20 or at the highest 30 if we kind of treat this as a flat just because it's less textury. But wow, that is a textured building right there. And how would you fix this? Take away some of the details? That's not going to fix it too much just because so much of the building is high texture. Your other option would be to take something like glow lichen and kind of almost like smooth it over. So you're smoothing this transition or maybe some more vines so that frankly, you're just kind of covering up the texture. Our wall right here is just about right. Now remember, flats are somewhat relevant to the blocks that are surrounding them. So kind of keep that in mind and you want to shoot for that 50% ratio. That's tip number one. Tip number two is texture in chunks. You don't want your texture to be just scattered all the way around. You specifically want to kind of group it up. So if you'll notice between this right here where your texture blocks are scattered to this where your texture blocks are clearly in clumps. So here's a clump, and then of course you have your 50% flat over here. Here's a clump of planks with just little bits coming out. And then here is a clump of the dark prismarine with just little bits coming out. But a majority of your texture is in one place. And then it just sort of transitions in and out of your 50% flat. Let's look at this all together. Now, notice here that I'm almost using it as a gradient, going from the lighter color to the darker color, but I'm still going in clumps. So this is a clump with a little bit of scattering out, some clumps with some scattering, some clumps with some scattering, some clumps with some scattering. And what that scattering does is it transitions from one gradient or one color to the next. But you will notice that a majority of the texture is in one clump. So step one, keep your 50% flat rule. And step two, make sure that when you do your textures, you are texturing in clumps and not scattering it all about. But you know what's really cool about this is that when you follow these rules, you can take walls like these here, walls like these here, and even what I would say is floors like these here and combine them into one building. So this is literally that first wall that we talked about and used and practiced on in our texture jump video. And this right here is half of one of those walls, specifically that just about right one that just has some different coloring at the bottom. And in doing so, you can make what is actually a really beautiful building that is just cohesive, that combines your different colors and your patterns that you want to use. And hey, if you want to learn more about how I detailed this, about how I created my color palette, or how I use the landscaping, there are previous how to build videos that can help you with that. And it is when you take these techniques and you combine them all together that you can make some really cool buildings. And then here's my final tip. This is a bonus tip, you guys. So after all of these things, your biggest thing, your next step that you can do is to practice. Not necessarily all at once because that can be hard, but just practice one. Just practice clumping. Just practice your 50% flats, whatever that is, because the more you practice and the more you build, the more fun it gets. I hope to see you next time for some more how to build videos, and we will see you later. Bye!